Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Friday to you. This is Let's Talk Tropics right here on Acadiana Weather Today on YouTube, where we talk about the Atlantic Basin, tropical systems that are out there, and things that may be developing over the course of time. Of course, right now we don't have any active tropical systems out there, and we've made it all the way through Gordon, and Gordon, still the remnants of Gordon, is still kind of hanging out in the Atlantic Ocean and being watched, but we'll watch some other things that are out there, including the rumors you may have heard that we could see some development down to our south here over the next couple of days. So let's get right into our current conditions. We're holding at 89 degrees right now here in Lafayette, and our dew point is at 71. So it is very summer-like out there, even though we're starting to get closer to the end of September and hoping we're going to see some fall-like temperatures eventually. Summer just wants to hang on here in South Louisiana. We've got a couple of isolated showers that have fired up out here in the Gulf waters, and that's kind of left over from some action that was on the St. Mary Parish coast very early this morning. But you can see that there's really not much to worry about on land, and we're starting to get some puffy clouds out there, but for the most part, I think we're going to stay rain-free here on land, and as we look at our traffic cams, you can see there's sunshine mixed in with clouds, and the roadways are all dry, and I'm not expecting any major travel issues when it comes to weather over the next several days, including the weekend, as things are going to be pretty sunny and also quite warm. So as we look at the U.S. satellite, including the Gulf, we've got a bit of a trough that's moving across the upper Great Lakes, another one that's digging through the Four Corner states, and most of this is going to be staying north of us thanks to a big ridge of high pressure that's currently over Texas and Louisiana. That's also going to prevent any of the rain from falling. And if you look right there at the bottom of your screen south of Cuba, you're starting to see a little bit more of that moisture building over the western part of the Caribbean Sea, and that might be something we're going to play with as we go into next week. But if you're deciding to do some boating over the weekend, or if you've got to work out in the Gulf waters, really it's going to be pretty quiet out there today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Light winds out of the west. Your seas are going to be running about 1 to 2 feet. And remember, the graphic that we're looking at here, the arrows that you're seeing on there, is the general wave direction and height. So it doesn't take in consideration of the winds, but your winds are going to be out of the west, and your seas are pretty much going to be about 1 to 2 feet in the nearshore waters. And other than those couple of thunderstorms that are right off the Louisiana coast, it looks like most of the Gulf of Mexico is fairly clear. Looks like we got some thunderstorms right there along the coast of the Yucatan, and a few scattered showers and thunderstorms over the Florida Keys. But for the most part, high pressure is starting to dig southward across the southeastern United States, and will keep everything relatively quiet over the weekend in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, out in the Caribbean, things are starting to get a little more interesting. We are starting to see more of the moisture building here over the western Caribbean here along the Central American coast, and we're going to go more into detail about that in just a second. But I did want to point out a couple of other areas that are being watched by the National Hurricane Center. You got disturbance 96L, that's right there, and then you've got the remnants of Gordon, which is right there, but the wind shear is quite strong, so it's blowing off any of the tops there. So we're not expecting a whole lot of development there over the next couple of days, but the National Hurricane Center putting a low wind chance for both of those systems in the Atlantic. And then, of course, about a 40% chance or a medium chance for development over the western part of the Caribbean Sea near Central America and possibly into the Gulf of Mexico. I don't think anything's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 days, but this is a 7-day outlook, so anywhere in that orange circle, we could see some tropical development between now and the end of next week. But you can see the moisture is already building there off of the Honduran and Nicaraguan coast, and some bigger thunderstorms stretching down into the extreme southwestern Caribbean along the Costa Rican coast and the Panamanian coast as well. And this is kind of the area that we're going to be watching over the next couple of days for the possibility of a low pressure area maybe developing, or quite a bit of moisture starting to gather in this particular area. And with that National Hurricane Center forecast showing about a 40% chance for development, I think part of the reason is the models, the way they're kind of forming something in that area. And then there's always a big concern this time of the year over the western part of the Caribbean because the water temperatures are so extreme there, and then those warm water temperatures go very, very deep. So there's a possibility you can get some quick intensification of a system as it taps into some of that high octane fuel. And that tropical cyclone heat potential is not only high here over the Caribbean Sea, but also here over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. And it's actually fairly high here over the Bay of Campeche too. So you're getting here on the high end of the scale of that tropical cyclone heat potential. And the reason why we look at that is you pair that with the very warm waters and some low wind shear. If you've got high TCHP in that area, you could see something whip up pretty quick. Now, wind shear is an inhibiting factor for developing tropical systems, and there is still some moderate wind shear here over the western part of the Caribbean. A little bit lower, though, out here right along the tip of the Yucatan and the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Then it's a bit more extreme here along the northern Gulf Coast. But things are expected to lighten up a little bit as we head into the middle and latter part of next week. So I know you've been following along on all the models, and you've probably seen all of the extremes with no context being put on Facebook for some folks that like to share the big stuff. And also, you got to make sure you look at the dates that are on there to make sure it's real. I saw something yesterday that was shared from 2020, and it was like, man, okay, that's 4 years old. That shouldn't be shared. So you got to really be careful of what you're consuming there on social media. So we'll just go through the model suite like we do each time here on Acadiana Weather Today's Let's Talk Tropics. And this is the GFS version over 10 days. And you can see low pressure developing over the Western Caribbean and then sliding its way northward across the Gulf of Mexico. The GFS has kind of been going back and forth between Louisiana and Florida, and it had a really weird path yesterday. This is a little bit more like what we were seeing earlier on, but you'll notice that once it does move inland sometime late next week, so late, we're talking about like next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and then notice how it just kind of meanders there off toward the west. And that's all part of the upper level pattern. We're going to show you that in just a little while. Euro model, of course, has been the weakest and the slowest of all four global models that we look at. It is showing the moisture building there as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and then a low pressure area kind of emerging off the Yucatan in the southern part of the Bay of Campeche as we go into next weekend. So it is quite slow. Remember, the GFS was putting something on the coast of the northern Gulf of Mexico on Saturday or Sunday, while the Euro model still has kind of a weak tropical depression over the Bay of Campeche. So there's a big difference in timing and strength. Canadian model has been the strongest of them all, and it really went weaker on the run that we had this morning, but now it's picked back up once again, and of course, you know, that is something that is concerning. It's kind of close to what the GFS does, lifting something out of the northwestern Gulf and then moving off toward the north and then pushing into maybe Louisiana or perhaps even eastern Texas, but then it kind of meanders again, and that's all part of that weak upper level pattern that I'm going to show you in just a while. And the Icon model has actually been one of the slower and weaker ones over the last couple of days, but this time it is indicating some kind of a trough over North America that it gets caught up in and really whips northward. In fact, that puts a landfall there over the Florida coast late Thursday of next week. And by the time we reach the end of the 10-day period, the low pressure center is already in the Tennessee Valley. So compared to the previous models, I would say the Icon has probably done the biggest flip when it comes to intensity as well as speed. Now, the track is kind of similar to what we've seen over the past several runs, but the Icon model showing that for right now. So we'll just go a week from today to show you some of the differences. So the similarities, first of all of the models are developing something in the western, northwestern Gulf, or rather Caribbean Sea or the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So all four models agree that something is going to come in there. It's just the timing, the track, and the intensity that's really off. So the GFS, again, this is showing you Friday of next week. So this is a week from today with a low pressure area, probably a tropical storm or a hurricane approaching either the southeastern Louisiana coast rather, or Mississippi, Alabama, or the Florida Panhandle. While the Euro, as I've said, is slower and much weaker. So this is also a week from today, and you can see compared to the GFS, It's a lot weaker, and it's also much slower, keeping a low pressure area down in the Bay of Campeche. We move on to the Canadian model, and you already saw the run and its kind of final destination, pushing it there over the southwestern Louisiana coastline. But it's still out in the Gulf of Mexico a week from today. But I'll tell you, the Canadian model that ran earlier this morning had a considerably weaker system coming on shore more over here, with a really deep trough coming in and kind of yanking it back off toward the north. So the Canadian model has done a considerable flip on intensity, timing, as well as track just in the last model run, so in the last 6 hours. And the Icon, which is really interesting, a week from today already has the low pressure area that would be a tropical system up here over the Tennessee Valley, and moving rapidly out of the Caribbean Sea and across the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps as a tropical storm or a hurricane. So what I wanted to show you were the different upper level patterns that are going to be in place, at least compared to all of the different models. So the GFS, all of these are indicating some kind of a trough is going to be building across the middle part of the country and maybe sending a front in our area. Now, so that's kind of the thing. Are we going to get tropical weather, or are we going to get a front? And fronts can be very disappointing during the month of September. As you know, we get really excited that there's this big cold front coming in, and then day after day after day goes by, and slowly but surely the cold front doesn't look as impressive, and then it's going to fall apart before it gets here. So that's kind of what we usually see here when we get into the latter part of September. We either get a really good front or we get something that's kind of disappointing. So in this particular scenario, it's showing a low and kind of getting cut off from the main flow across the upper Midwest, which would generally try to pull that system northward toward the northern Gulf Coast. And then remember, I showed you that kind of meander there in that last part is because that cutoff low just doesn't have anything to really pull it. So it's kind of missing one trough and then almost missing another. And again, these are going to be changing over the next several days. But I just wanted to explain the upper level pattern and how we try to figure out the forecast track for a hurricane, and also sometimes the speed. Now, the Euro pattern has more of a cutoff type of low over the Great Lakes, and it's generally farther to the east as that low tries to develop over the Bay of Campeche. Remember, it was considerably slower. So if that low already goes by, then whatever the Euro is trying to develop over the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico, it really doesn't have any sense of direction. There's nothing really to pull on it. So it would just either slowly meander over the Gulf or maybe slide in any given direction. So there's really no final solution when it comes to the Euro according to the upper level pattern. Now, the Canadian had a really deep trough in the upper levels in the model run that ran earlier this morning. It's kind of backed off on that, and it almost appears that it's going to be missing one trough, which is going to be out here off the east coast, but yet not able to catch the trough that's over the plains. So you got a couple of different scenarios, because remember, the low is going to try to squeeze in between low pressure and high pressure. It's going to find that path of least resistance to go northward. So in this particular case, if it doesn't grab the low that's over here, it would maybe turn more toward the northeast. If it doesn't grab onto the low that's over the plains, then it's going to kind of follow what the GFS does, have it move inland, and then just kind of linger here over southeast Texas or portions of Louisiana. And then going on to the Icon, remember how much faster it was. So this has a really strong cutoff low that's digging way farther south than the other models are showing. And of course, that would pick it up a lot quicker from the Northwest Caribbean and then zip it inland. And as you can see, the surface low where the arrow is pointing at is over southern Illinois by that point in time. So you got a huge difference in timing where you've got the Euro that's keeping things in the Bay of Campeche right there, while the Icon model already has it up in the Tennessee Valley. So the Canadian and the GFS are kind of stuck in the middle of the two. So there's some agreement, A, that we're going to be seeing something tropical trying to develop over the Gulf of Mexico or the Northwestern Caribbean. But on the other hand, the other three factors of timing, track, and intensity are all kind of all over the place right now. So there isn't a whole lot of agreement when it comes to those models. So really it's just something that we're going to have to continue to watch over the next several days. We don't have anything to worry about this weekend, but if you got some plans going into the following weekend, that's where I would start to just kind of keep track of what's going on and check in over the weekend to see if anything has changed, which I'm sure we're going to see a lot of change between now and Monday. But if you kind of keep up with the forecast, it helps you know what's real, what's not real, what should be shared on social media, what really shouldn't be shared on social media. So it gives you a better idea of how the forecast comes together, how the different puzzle pieces interact with each other, and it helps you to learn how the whole atmospheric process works. And then when you see some of these crazy things that are on social media, you'll be able to kind of X those out and not worry about it and not get kind of pulled into some of that stuff that's out there. So I'll keep watch over the course of the weekend. Right now, not anticipating doing anything special or live over the course of the weekend. If we get something that actually develops by the time we reach Sunday, I might do a quick live one on Sunday, but I'll be back on Monday at noon for another edition of Let's Talk Tropics. So I really hope that you enjoy this program. If you do, please like this video and also subscribe to my channel and turn those notifications on. And I will be keeping track of stuff and posting that on my social media pages there. So if you want to follow along on Facebook and X, I would appreciate a like or a follow on there as well. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm excited. As soon as I finish this, I'm going to close shop and I am on my way to the other side of the Atchafalaya Basin to go see my son and daughter-in-law, and my little baby granddaughter who's turning 7 months old on Sunday. Can't wait to see those new teeth and watch her start to crawl across the floor. So I'm going to be out of here for the rest of the day today, and I'll keep stuff on track of what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of days. So follow my social media pages for the latest. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.